Welcome everyone to the Bugyan podcast. Today we have with us Prithvi from Autodit. In this podcast, Prithvi, we basically invite CISOs, CIOs, security engineers, and founders of security companies to come and share their experiences and learnings with us, talk about their journey so that the other people, the CISOs, the founders, the security engineers who are watching this podcast can maybe implement into their life and improve on it. Prithvi, for everyone's knowledge, has been the CISO of Darwin-box, and then he's moved on to start his own company, which is in compliance automation called Autodit. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Prithvi. Would love it if you can give a quick introduction.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ro. Thanks for inviting me for the podcast. Like Dhruv mentioned, right? And I've been a CISO at Darwinbox, but with around 18 years of experience, worked on different, different technologies, different enterprises, and different startups. And I've pretty much seen, the shift in technologies, right from the hardware days to the cloud days, right? And today I'm looking forward for the conversation to discuss on various things, right? I mean, about my journey and about my experiences on security and setting up an startup in cybersecurity.
For sure, looking forward to it, Prithvi. So I'll get right into it. The first thing that I want to ask you is a bit different. Since you have experience working at a large company such as Darwinbox, and then now you have experience with working with startups and providing compliance for early stage companies as well. What was the difference in doing the compliance and security for such a large company like which is Darwinbox now, and how
Absolutely.
was it different than what a normal person would look at?
Absolutely. So, on Dhruv, I worked at a larger company than Darwinbox, right? And I worked for GE and I worked for Wipro, right? I'll pause for the journey at Darwinbox, but to answer to your question, HR, right? Compliance is it's a simple workflow, right? You define something, you adhere to it, you collect the evidence of it, you package that, give it to an auditor, right? It can be financial compliances, regulatory compliances, legal compliances, security compliances, or anything, right? I mean, it's a simple workflow. Now the problem just multiplies with the size of the company. Right. In a startup, you can just poke someone, just throw a paper and ask them to give an evidence, right? Probably your HR is sitting right next to you, your IT is sitting right next to you. But in an enterprise with a distributed team, global distributed organizations, it gets hard to link this or chase people in getting this evidences, right? The problem statement increases with the number of employees that you have in your organization. All you need to do is simply have a defined workflow, right? When you're incubating practices, security practices, right? And you just need to set the workflow right. And if you have your workflow right, if you have right set of procedures, you're sorted. If not, the problem gets complicated with every new employee who joins your company.
Correct. Correct. No, that makes sense. I think that's something similar that many CISOs on this podcast have also told. I remember Hilal telling us about the fact that at scale, these things become problematic, and the fact that
Absolutely.
daily reporting that needs to be done becomes problematic. So they implement these compliance as code kind of solutions so that
Absolutely.
they just have a portal which the auditor can directly log into
Absolutely.
and look at. So I think that's something you expand on later as well.
Yeah.
Um, One more quick question I have over here is that, just talking about Hilal, he was also mentioning the, systems engineer kind of role. So, which is something, he was talking about back in the days that used to, security, that used to only be systems engineer. And that's because, you have to look at systems, that kind of a thing. It's interesting because you have also gone through a similar journey, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, can you talk a bit about how that was and how is it different from a CISO role, which of course you eventually gone down to?
Mhm. These are not different to
Mhm.
start with. And when I started my career, right, and I was working, after a couple of years into my career, I started working in this company called CP Technologies, right, which was supporting data centers for IRCTC, which is probably the biggest web
Correct.
application back, right? I was asked to work on managing the data centers, right? And those days are the days when there was no easy portal for you to manage your infrastructure. You should go to the data center, pick the server, unplug the wire, plug in a floppy drive, update the firmware, and those were the days, right? Now, that gave me. I'm not sure if most of the people at your generation would know a difference between a cross cable and a strike cable, right? Back then,
No idea.
between two devices, you cannot just put a straight cable. The way all the seven colors in a LAN cable is, you need to twist it, right? So that was the day, right? With that
Okay.
experience, right? While I got opportunities to work on different projects, different open source projects, right? I got exposure to look at different aspects of web application or the internet, right? How bits and bytes transfer over the wire. It can be a firewall, it can be a servers, it can be your web applications, your Linux operating or your operating systems in general, right? I got to see or work or do my bit at each layer of this, infrastructure, right? Now, with that, what happens is, and I would believe that an infrastructure or a support engineer, right, who works uh, uh, closely with the service, he would know
Mhm.
better about every aspect of security. That is what I believe. And the reason for that is simple. Where does the problem start? Right? It starts, on the OS layer, right?
Correct.
And that's where you can argue with me that the problem starts on the WAF layer or on the peripheral layers, right? But I believe that there's a real problem when someone is getting into your operating system, right? So how do you protect it, right? When someone understands how to protect operating system, how to protect web applications, how to patch your applications, it can be PHP, .NET, Java, whatever, right? Looking at deprecated libraries, and someone looks at top down, and I'm speaking about bottom up, right? So that is experience that I have. But when I joined Darwinbox, something interesting happened, right? I was taking care of building infrastructures for scale while it was growing. I was building the systems for scale, and there was no one to take care of security, right?
Okay.
As obvious choice, because I knew infrastructure, I knew IT, and I knew the code base, right? I was asked to take care of infrastructure, I was asked to take care of security, and I was asked to take care of compliance. And that's how my journey towards the CISO went on, right? But in short, a CISO is someone who understands how the traffic is flowing from A to B with every hurdle, right? With every checkpoint, right? Someone who understands
Correct.
that can be a better CISO.
No, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And, it comes down to the core point that one, whether a CISO should have that kind of a bottom-up understanding or not, right? And everything that we're seeing nowadays, it does say that you need to have a mixed understanding of that and then apply it at scale, like you said. And the second thing, for even a security engineer kind of a position, I personally 100% believe anybody having a bottom-up understanding of a system has a much stronger chance of finding a flaw and securing it than someone from a top-down.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
White box code review is much harder than doing black box. But if you
Absolutely.
get a developer to do a white box code review, he will be able to do it better because when you know how
Absolutely.
to make something, you know how to break something. And you're, of
Absolutely.
course, able to break it much better. So that is something I think many people who are watching this podcast, including security engineers, will connect with. And that is something that I think, you are really recommending that is something they should follow for sure. Right. So moving on to a different kind of a question, Prithvi. As a CISO, how do you look at the overall Indian security landscape? How is it connected? How has it evolved over the years? Right? Because again, we do not have that kind of a long experience.
Yeah.
How have the priorities changed over the last 10 years in a way? Is my question for the CISO.
Yeah.
Because from what I understand, early on it used to be just compliance. Nowadays, people are really evaluating red teaming and other things as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So,
What is your take on that?
my my view on this is very simple, right? And everything was working in silo before 2010, right? It's not just security. Even if you look at product development, even if you look at infrastructures, there were jobs that were existing called database engineers or support engineers, right? It's no longer existing now. They call them DevOps, right? And if you look at the time before 2010, it was all working in silos, right? But what happened after 2010 is everything, the open source community grew, right? And people were integrating a lot of things, right? Now, with that, what happened is now the security which is patched along with this or tagged along with this needs to be integrated, right? What this means is now security is not one man's role, or security cannot run in silo, right? And security is a combination of many things. And it can be cloud security, IT security, application security. Security needs to work together, right? Now, speaking about the community, and like BugBase, right? You guys are solving one important part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, and we at Autodit, we are solving for the other piece, right? I mean, you cannot do everything, and we cannot do everything, or just like that, a
Correct.
company cannot execute everything standalone, right? They need to work with partners, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at a traditional SaaS company, their focus should be on building their application and building their brand, right? They cannot just build everything together. For that, someone
Mm-hmm.
who's taking care of security in the organization, it's extremely important that he's looking at partners and he's building that partnership with the ecosystem to build a proper security practice in his organization. I mean, in short, and without community, a life of a CISO is not a happy life, right? He should be
Got it.
connected.
Got
He
it.
should be helped because without help, a CISO cannot succeed in his organization.
Makes sense, Prithvi. I think you are in a way that fact has still going on, it has been going on since then, right? It's something that just kind of started evolving. Nowadays, we are seeing that with SaaS tools simply. Correct. That
Yeah,
even if you're looking to integrate a payment gateway, many
absolutely.
times if the payment gateway itself would have secured themselves, your application would have secured itself. But the way you have implemented Razorpay's API, right, may be flawed, which leads to a payment bypass.
Absolutely.
Correct. So these
Yeah.
kinds of business logic errors are the ones which are even in the bug bounty space right now. I'll tell you, based on all the reports I've seen, are the most common ones, right? Whenever there is an integration happening between two parties.
Yeah.
So that does make a lot of sense to me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the days before the integrations, right? I mean, this was all responsibility of one organization or one product. But after
Hmm.
everything is integrated, I mean, at Autodit, we use more than 40 plus integrations today. And
Right.
sending it for sending emails, AWS, and we use 40 plus tools to build a tool, right? Now, we worried about 40 different tool security, right? Not just Autodit security, right? Now,
Yeah, makes sense.
now, for that, it's important that you are aware and you're doing your third-party risk assessments right, right? And
Correct.
you're protecting your interfaces where the data is getting ingested or pumped out, right? I mean, it's important in this integrated world that not just you, but even your partners are secure and all your integrations are secure. I agree with you on that, too.
Got it. No, I think that's something a lot of people will connect with over here. Now, Prithvi, coming to again, Darwinbox is something that really interests everyone in this space. So I'm gonna question you on that a lot.
Absolutely, and I
Uh,
love to speak about Darwin-box. I've spent sweet 7 years, and it was a beautiful journey. I would love to speak all day on Darwin-box.
Although the company itself has progressed so rapidly and reached such scale in the enterprise space, I think doing that from an Indian perspective is too tough, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that this was achieved is amazing. So I want to understand more from Darwin Box's perspective. What was the journey like? It's an HR tech company, right?
Yeah.
What are the priorities of an HR tech company? Because say Freshworks would be like okay, we're looking at the CRMs and everything else, so the customer data is the most important. For the Razorpays, the PII data would be the most important that they have to secure.
Absolutely.
For an HR tech company, what is the most important?
So it's obvious PI data, right? And if you look
Yeah.
at HR data, right, and HR data is a crucial data of any company. Now
Mhm.
let's simply take this as an example, right? Every user run has a minimum of 10 PII variables, personal identifiable information, which they're storing it
Mhm.
in the HR system, right? Now, a couple of things that needs to be taken care of. One, if you are compliant with GDPR or the new DPDP law, I mean, if you look at that, right, I mean, there should be an interface, and let's just speak about GDPR for now, right? There should be an interface where you need to take consent from the end user or the employee in
Correct.
this context, right? And making that consent management, right, in a SaaS context, it's important because if you are just selling it in a B2C context, it's you own the consent management. But if you're doing it in a B2B context and you're translating the consent management to your customers where they are translating it to their end users, right? So with the technologies, how do you take care of that consent management and how do you store, retrieve the data and how do you take care of data deletion, right? So for example,
Data relation.
there's one end user sitting somewhere in China or in Africa, right? I mean, if he says, boss, I don't want my data to be saved on Darwin-box, right? And you just don't delete it in the prediction, in the live instance, but also there should be a way to delete it on the backup instances, right? And it's a
Correct.
combination of two things. And how do you logically segregate PI data, right? And the problem just increases as you add new customer, as you add new employees, right? I mean, it just multiplies, right? But one thing is very important. You need to make sure that all the principles that you have, or all the architecture that you're building, it needs to be embedded into your roots, right? Into your framework. And it is something, especially with security, you cannot just do it at scale. You need to
Correct.
start at zero and just need to improve it while your business is improving, right? While your business is growing, you need to improve your methodologies on security, but you cannot just place something when you're growing. You need to have it on day one, right?
Correct.
Like earlier in our conversation, you're speaking about developers being the best judge of doing the security assessments, right? We have included that as part of SDLC process. A code that is built is not going to
Mhm.
production until it is rated A plus, right? So
Correct.
we made those policies, right? But it's important that you take care of two things: one, your architecture, and two, your regulations, right? So, but one thing with and I want to call this out, right? And we were fortunate at Darwinbox that we partnered with a lot of people who and when we started Darwinbox, right, and when we started implementing security and compliances at Darwinbox, GDPR was just launched, right, in 2000. I don't remember 18 or 17, right? 18, I guess, right? When it launched, I mean, probably implementing GDPR today at Darwinbox can be crazy tough, but back then it was small and we were able to, proactively do it, and it made a life.
No, this makes a lot of sense. It brings me back to the overall GitLab exploit that happened long back. GitLab exploit, but the issue that happened internally within the company, wherein you had to delete an employee's uh, user, and that was being done live in production,
Yeah,
and that caused all kinds of errors. Right.
absolutely.
Eventually, it led to a problem wherein some database migration was happening, because of which the production-based database got dropped, and then the whole thing was a massive incident that GitLab talks about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when you look at the solutions that these guys put in to replace them, they were just like, okay, whatever policy you've made, you just have to implement it from day one. Like, agar ye hota, if it was in place, it would have worked, right? And it was
Absolutely.
mentioned, it was just not in place. And then they decided that, okay, maybe we should just mark a user as deleted, and then background may asynchronously kind of
Yeah.
do that. So these things are extremely important, and I can see how these things are important, even more important at scale,
Yeah.
especially with the scale that Darwinbox kind of reached. Makes sense. So you spoke about the PDPR bill, right? I think it was passed yesterday in Rajya Sabha, so it's
Yeah.
going to become law.
Yeah.
For a CISO or a CIO who's looking at this podcast, many of them have asked me, build something in the space that makes me compliant to PDPR. That will be the best product you can build. Um, but if you look at the bill itself, right, isn't very prescriptive in nature in any way whatsoever. Correct. It requires you to establish three, four things, take consent, and all that.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on the bill, and how do you become compliant to it? That's the big question here, right?
It, see, I mean, like ISO 27001 or SOC 2, there's no external auditor who can sign on these laws, right? For
Correct.
HIPAA, GDPR, the new law from India, right? And there's no auditor who can sign on it. You can claim yourself certified today, right? You'll get to see if you have really implemented it or not only when someone finds you, with a hefty amount, right?
Correct.
Now, for that, it's very simple, right? I mean, all you need to do is speak with someone who have done it in the past, you know, and implement stuff that really matters to you, right? If you go speak with someone who's implemented in the past, you'll get to know what are the things that needs to be taken care of. I'll tell you a few
Mhm.
simple things, right? Have a DPO appointment. DPO appointed. It can be your CISO, it can be your CTO or the CEO or anyone in the company, right?
Correct.
Just create a dual role called a DPO, assign him some responsibilities, and put his details on your privacy statement, right? That will solve for half the problems of GDPR or
Where do you have to put his name on your website?
On your website, your privacy statement. And the reason for that is very simple. When someone wants to delete, raise the request for deletion of the data, they should know who
Very
should they
good.
contact, right?
Correct.
So DPO is a data privacy officer, data protection officer, and
Correct.
he'll just drop an email and he's going to delete it. That is one thing, right? The other thing is, manage your cookies right. Build your cookie consent or consent policies, right? The little things and prepare your policies right, right? And that's it, right? It's not complicated. It may look scary from a distance, but if you really do it right, I mean, it probably takes you like 10 or 15 days for you to be complaint against it. And I'm not speaking
No,
about the
Prithvi, I think
actual changes that you need to do in your application, but with the procedural part of it, probably 15 or 20 days, you'll be compliant with GDPR and probably 70% compliant with DPDP because I don't know the other 30%
correct.
yet.
Yeah, no, I think the apprehensiveness is because of the fact that it doesn't. It's just very open in the sense that anything could happen to you if you do anything wrong, right?
Absolutely.
And in a way, that is good as well because I think everybody is starting to understand that security is not like a checkbox, right? It's more of a journey with regards to doing whatever in the world is possible to protect your users' data. If you're not doing that,
Absolutely.
you're doing it wrong. Simply.
No, but
So
one
that,
thing, right? We should remember this, right? These bills are drafted by the legal people. They're not security people, right? People who think they know security and are, looking at a lot of problems across the sector, right? And they're not built from, people like you, Dhruva, I mean, who have been
correct,
looking at the systems closely, right? These are legal. There's a legal language, and you can articulate it in the way you want it, right?
correct,
It's important that you build whatever is there in your purview to build. And if you go to build everything that is asked in the law, you can never do it, and there's no point in doing anything, right? You can
correct,
articulate anytime that you need. It is needed for you to convince a third party. It can be your auditor, it can be a customer, or it can be your someone who's asking you about your company security posture, right? You just need to have things for you to articulate it better and show it in.
hmm No, that does make sense. And coming from you, since I think you will be helping a lot of people now with the
Absolutely.
upcoming kind of bill. Yeah. So coming bit more into Autodit now, right?
Yeah.
What was your overall experience, moving from being a CISO of course some
Mhm.
very large company
Yeah.
to founding a company like Autodit? Like how
Absolutely.
was the difference? How has everything changed? How has life changed? How is it,
Absolutely.
that you are now the seller instead of the buyer?
Yeah. Right, Daman. So, interestingly, right, I started my experience of my journey on information security compliances in 2016. Before that, I was
Mhm.
always building something or destroying something, right? And I was an engineer building infrastructures and scaling it, right? So I was either building it or destroying it. But when I started, when I was asked to take care of information security and compliances, and after 4 years at Darwinbox, I realized that there's a lot of abuse that is happening in this space, right? People
Mhm.
are not getting the value of what they're doing, right? And for example, you as a company, if you're doing ISO or SOC 2, you're supposed to secure your systems. And instead, the auditor is just giving you a certificate for you to grow your business.
Correct.
It's abuse, right? I mean, I really didn't like the injured. I mean, I had a lot of disagreements with my auditors in the past, and I didn't like the way it was being executed. That's what I thought, right? And it's a simple workflow, like I was telling, right? Create something, adhere to it, gather evidences, give it to an auditor, right? And
Mhm.
this workflow can be automated, right? At least 90% of the things can be automated. Why can't you just do it, right?
Correct.
I started looking at other products which are getting ready for the space, and I thought I'm a customer once, right? I'm just building a solution that I would love to use probably 6 years before today, right? While I
Mhm.
started my career at Darwin-box, right? I'm
Mhm.
just building a solution for me to use them, right? So for that reason, it is simple. The vision is simple, right? We want to help startups where they're really getting value out of the certifications, really securing,
Right.
really protecting the data, right? That is the vision. And for enterprises, we have solutions where a CISO can do his job probably 10x better. So these are two different tool sets and two different approaches that you're doing today.
Prithvi, I think that's very important. And the way a lot of people are looking at compliance now, I was reading this one joke where this company is getting a SOC 2, but they're unable to because right now their data is not encrypted at rest. But one of their employees basically downloads a malicious attachment, opens it, and all the company's data gets encrypted, and for a ransom, and suddenly they are SOC 2 compliant. Right. So this is how the whole thing is kind of
No,
working out.
so Dhruval, I'll just add on to that, right? I mean, I know at least 100 plus companies over the course of last 6 7 years. I looked at the
Mhm.
security posture, right? They asked for my guidance or advice or consulting, right? I No one ever protects or encrypts the PI data, right? There is just one screenshot that someone gives to an auditor, right? Of
Yeah,
one particular field, probably an S3 bucket encryption screenshot or something like that, right? I
correct.
mean, what's wrong with encrypting your PI data, man? I mean, it just takes probably 2 sprints to change everything, but let's do it,
Correct.
right? I mean, so at least at Autodit, we don't just let our customers and we don't let them just give us screenshots, right? I mean, we're
Mhm.
very clear. And if you're just giving us a screenshot, we're not helping you with your compliances, right? We want you to protect your
Makes sense.
data because one bad night and you're done. You're closing your business, and we don't want you to be there. And that's how we operate, and that's how we.
No, I think that's super important considering, and I think from a buyer side as well, right? Many of these companies are just asking for that check mark as of now. So for a startup or for any company, right, the fact that they're actually seriously secure becomes less important than the fact that they have a certificate. Correct.
Absolutely.
So I feel that the data protection bill will also implement this as an overall control and should
Absolutely.
again, boost the overall cybersecurity that we look at in
Absolutely.
India.
And
So this is.
one thing I want to add, Dhruva, is, I mean,
Mhm.
the buyer mindset is also changing, right? I mean, if you look before the
Mhm.
pandemic, ISO certification was just a certification, right? Nothing
Mhm.
else. Now, people getting SOC 2 getting significantly important is the testimony that people are really thinking about security, right?
Mhm.
And even some I was recently speaking with a customer and on Monday, right? And he's asked us clear, and even if you take 6 months, I want a proper security to be implemented. I don't want a certificate, right? And I
Mhm.
was happy, right? And if you look, the people were taking security seriously because every 2 days we are seeing some scary news on LinkedIn, right? Or some posting. I mean, a lot of companies were getting shut down, right? And
Correct.
there are a lot of people waiting to exploit you. And even the buyer's perspective of information security compliance is changing, and which is happening for a good
Mhm.
cause. And I'm sure DPDP law will add a significant impact on how the buyers on the buyer's mindset.
Makes sense. So, Prithvi, another, similar question to this. What is your opinion on the overall, GRC market in India? Uh, I understand, of course, it's a large market, but always, there is the point that okay, we just want it for the sake of it, correct? Not for the real security.
Absolutely.
Often it is for the fact that okay, a big four is doing it, so it's okay, right? So
Yeah.
if a Deloitte or someone else comes in and does it, it makes sense. So, how do you think the market has progressed in the past, year or so with regards to, I understand that you're saying that people are looking at security as a point, but still, if I go to a bank today, they will ask me, okay, Big Four se report la kar. So, how is it that you, as a company, convince your customers that what we're doing is actually legitimate and to the quality or even better of a Big Four?
So I want to correct you there, though. We really don't care
Hmm.
if Big Four is doing the audit. We are just going
Okay.
to give you a tool that will enable what you're doing before you go to Big Four, right?
Okay.
We are a SaaS platform which is enabling you to do everything that you do in your organization for you to be compliant, right? Of the day,
Okay.
Big Four is just coming and doing an audit, right? And
Hmm.
even Big Four can use Autodit to, in fact, one of our customers is working with the Big Four, and Big Four is using Autodit platform, or one of the Big Four is using a platform to make them ready for the audit, right? But if you ask me the perspective of where the GRC market is today, if you look at startups in SMB, right, there are only 15% of companies who are certified today.
Right.
Let's assume that certification is a testimony that a company or certification is probably a testimony that a company is investing on information security. If we assume that,
Correct.
And there are like 55% of more than 60% of companies who are yet to start their investment on security, right? Which means there's a long way to go. And understand this, right? Even a small pawn shop with 3 laptops in it, they need information security because you never know what that guy is doing sitting in their sitting with their IT asset or laptop, right? So there are like millions of companies, millions of products, millions of service companies. They're yet to start the journey with information security. And GRC in India is growing like crazy, right? After we started Autodit or you know. There are more than 150 vendors in just in Hyderabad who are helping in GRC.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
and
pretty
so
interesting.
yeah, yeah. There are
Yeah.
more than 150, and we are working with around 70 plus vendors in Hyderabad, right? And we,
Oh,
I met 70 plus vendors in Hyderabad and offered them our platform, and there are a lot of vendors, right? Every city, I'm sure there are like at least 100 vendors who are doing this ISO SOC 2 GDPR, right? But I think the important part is this, right? A buyer should know that why he's getting this ISO SOC 2 certification. Today,
correct.
a company is taking ISO or SOC 2 certification only when their customer is asking them before signing a contract, right?
Correct.
Uh, If that changes, everything is streamlined, right? Now,
I agree that.
a company should do SOC 2 or GDPR to protect the data, not to satisfy the customer.
Correct.
If that can be changed, I'm not sure if it is changing in the next 2 3 years, but I'm sure that's the future, and I'm sure the law DPDP law is for sure going to bring that change in the mindset.
Makes sense, Prithvi. With my previous question, I'd like to reformulate it a bit. Um,
Mhm.
how is it that you ensure? So there are, of course, n number of vendors out there in India,
Yeah,
right, who are doing ISO compliance, मतलब not the certification, but the implementation. Correct.
absolutely, absolutely.
Similar to yours. My question is, how do you compete with these guys? And if a Big Four is coming in to actually certify, how is it that you're able to provide that level of quality that the Big Four is able to give you the thumbs up? That is the question.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
if you look at compliances, there are two parts to it, right? There is evidence automation. That is
Mhm.
that is what all the competitors of Autodit are doing today, right?
Correct.
They call it software automation, and the way they do that is they build a lot of integrations, they collect evidences, and that is job done, right?
Correct.
I will speak about few things. I'm sure you're using one of my competitors tool now. I don't want to get into details, but I want to question you this, right? How do you do security awareness trainings? How do you do vendor risk assessment, right? How do you respond to RFPs? So you still need a person in your organization, probably someone from your tech leadership, right? Who's
Correct.
spending a lot of time, on in addition to his job in doing these things. Then why do you need a tool which is just doing compliances? And why can't you, take a tool that is replacing, that human persona thing and automating the whole piece, right? So we at Autodit,
Mhm.
our objective is simple. We want to replace or build a CISO in your organization with this tool, right? And we don't want you to invest in a tool and a person in your organization who's taking care of compliances, right? Both of them
Understood.
together resulted it. So we have automated RFP automation, we have automated third-party risk assessments, we have automated security awareness programs, we have automated bunch of things that someone from your tech leadership is doing today in your organization.
Prithvi, I think that's super interesting because what you're saying, actually, I am able to relate with 100%.
Yeah,
Someone in my tech leadership does have to commit an insanely large amount of time in
absolutely.
setting a lot of these things up.
So
But then,
I'll just connect it back, right? And there are a lot of people who proposed me tools in 2017 when I started Darwin-box. Like I said, I'm a user. And I know a tool cannot replace a human, right? I'm a user
correct.
once, so I'm just building a solution for my problem back then.
So, Prithvi, I have one question. A lot of these times, and this is a question that many of the VCs who have invested in these companies also have, is that after a point, you're just, blurring the line between product service, right? Because there will always be a service angle to this product that is being built out. I understand that you've automated, RFP and training and everything else, which I would be actually curious to know how you've automated. But at the end of the day, a lawyer does have to get involved. Someone does have to get involved. So, for you as a company, do you want to position yourselves as someone who wants to ensure that it gets automated to a point wherein human interaction becomes absolutely minimal? Or do you want to position yourself as a managed, kind of a product wherein whatever services are also coming, you are connected with vendors to do that for you, but the product, of course, is the main thing, right? Which is what many companies are doing.
So we don't do services, Dhruva. We outsource
Okay.
that. We don't do it. We just pass on the contract to vendors or
Okay.
partners. What we do is simple. It's a SaaS platform.
Mm-hmm.
So what is third-party risk assessment? Let me just give you an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're working with 100 vendors. You want to know the score, right? Today, on large conglomerates, right? Let's just take, one big company, right? They're dealing with 3,000 vendors today. Do you know how they do vendor management today? It is simple. They have an Excel sheet. Some 50
Mm-hmm.
or 100 member team is taking that Excel sheet, sending it to these vendors, chasing them, reading the responses manually, giving them a sign off yes and no. That is how it is
Mm-hmm.
happening, right?
Okay.
Why can't we just automate this, right? I mean, it's a
Yeah,
workflow.
that's straightforward. Correct.
You use AI to articulate the responses that you get from the vendor and rate them automatically. So that is exactly
Correct.
what we built,
Okay.
right? So that's the SaaS platform that we're offering. Now, with that, you don't need that 50 member team, or you as a CISO can make some quantitative decisions if you have to go with the vendor or not, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
same way, for security awareness trainings, as soon as if you're using Google Workspace or O365 or any SAML or OAuth-based authentication, as soon as the user
Mm-hmm.
is started there, the employee who just joined your organization is going to get a link saying, okay, this is the training you need to go through, give a consent, the consent is stored. That's it. Today, how people are doing it, every Monday or every month, when new joiners are joining your organization, they block 1 hour, they run through this PPT, boring PPT, right?
Correct.
And that's how they do it. Why? I mean, why can't you just automate that, right? And
I've done it once in my life and I hated it.
no, I've done it for 4 years, man. I know the pain. So we are trying to automate that piece, right? So we're trying to gamify the whole experience, right? So why can't just Dhruva at BugBase? Why can't this persona using deep place or some persona just uh, contextually speak about your organization in LMS, right? We're not there yet, but that's why we're reaching,
Mm-hmm.
and that's objective.
Absolutely. No, I think the day we get there, I think that will be a great day, right?
So
Um,
it's
I
coming
mean,
soon, Dhruva.
I completely understand how AI fits into this entire thing. It's a direct product market fit for you guys, so
Absolutely.
something you should certainly be looking forward to. Just a final, question or like a point which you should be pointing out to Prithvi, to your ideal buyer who may be watching this. What is it that you want to tell them with regards to why is it that they should go for Autodit, right? And what is it that you're doing different? Just as a final closing statement.
Yeah, why Autodit? It's simple, right? We are your compliance partners, and we're not.
Mhm.
So Autodit is the only investment that you're going to make, right? And there's no need for you to buy any tools, right? And if you go with an auditor that is, traditionally doing it, and you still need to invest in a resource who's taking care of that internally. You need to put in tools, and Autodit is the only investment that you need, and we're there for you to take you from zero to hero. And we've been helping 45 companies across the globe in the last 6 months of operations. And I'm sure we're going to solve your problem because that's where we're coming from. And we've seen this before, we've done it before, and we can do it again.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much for that, Prithvi. And that's an amazing closing statement. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I think we covered everything from a founder's perspective, from a CISO's perspective, from a security engineer's perspective, from a GRC person's perspective. And
Absolutely.
I think everybody who's seen this podcast has something interesting to take back and implement in their own life. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much and looking forward to connecting with you again soon.
Sure, Joa. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. And I appreciate you inviting me for this podcast.